we'll bring him to the stage now. So.
I'm not a big fan of podiums. And so we're going to go through this deck. I will not promise you that I'm going to stick to the content that's here, so you'll have to bear with me as I play through this. I got to find a little button. I guess I need that too. So my name is Robert Hancock. I'm with Smart Online, and we're going to go through a brief agenda. We're going to talk about mobile strategy, pre-launch and post-launch strategies, and marketing, et cetera. So it's going to kind of be a little bit of all the parts of mobile app development. So when you sit down to consider what your mobile strategy is going to be, there's some very basic things that we recommend that you go through as a process to prepare for that. The first of those is to establish goals. You can confuse yourself into thinking that you need to put everything in the basket. And I don't know how many of you have developed apps in the past, but there's a tendency, because of the price and the length of time that it takes to develop an app, for you to get this giant basket and have everybody and their brother shove something into it. And that actually increases the cost and increases the time to market. It also decreases the ability to effectively influence a particular marketplace, because you may be trying to do too many things at once. So we really do think you need to really figure out what your goals are first. There was a good presentation yesterday where they were talking about the American Cancer Society mobile website. It was a really good example of them knowing who their demographic was, and the fact that most Hispanics were not using apps, but were instead using mobile web. And so they made a decision to make a mobile app in a mobile website as opposed to a native app. And so that, I have to tell you, I don't remember who was it. Yeah. So if anybody wants to talk about that use case, this gentleman over here can talk with you. It's a really good example of being smart in the beginning. Identifying markets, again, they did that in that use case. You really need to figure out who you're going to reach. Now I'm going to embarrass somebody, Juliet back here from Southern States. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that company. It's an ag chemical and local, I think they have 200 retail locations, and mostly in the southeast and east coast. They have a very difficult problem in that they really have two different types of customers. They have what we call the corporate farmer, or what I'll call the corporate farmer. So this is the guy that has 1,000 acres and he's planting corn and wheat, and he has tractors and cows. Then they have the hobby farmer. So this is the guy that lives in Cary, North Carolina, that wants to have a chicken coop in his backyard and have 12 chickens and collect eggs every day. You cannot market effectively in the same mobile presence to both of them. You could try, but you really need to address both of those audiences with their own needs and their own assets. Now, leveraging assets is a big part of this. When you're going through the process of considering how you're going to go to market mobily, you really have to decide, what are all the things that I have available to me now? I'm going to use a specific example. The city of Winston-Salem in North Carolina wanted an app so that their guys who cut water off when you don't pay your bill, can go out and right before they cut the water off, they check, did this guy pay his bill this morning? Now, previously they were just going out with a sheet of paper, they cut the guy's water off, they'd come back, they'd find out, actually he paid his bill about an hour before you did that. You got to go back out there now and cut it back on. Now they're able to actually make that change in the app. When the guy shows up to pay his bill, he has to pay a $75 hookup fee because he's already been terminated. One of the things they found out was that they had this database of dog bites. So they knew every location in the city over the past 10 years where somebody's dog had bitten a postal worker. So what they did was they actually took that asset and they built it into the app so that when these guys go and they check that address, it actually shows up as red so that he knows, hey, there's a dog here that might bite me. Now, that's a minor example of understanding your asset base so that you can reutilize that in a mobile presence. We see a lot of city governments that are doing that with bike path and crime statistics so that you know as a mother, I don't want to have my kids drive down this part of the bike path because it's red because there's a high crime area. Now, those are some use cases of leveraging your assets, but I'm sure you guys can understand you really do need to have an inventory of all of your digital and informational assets at your fingertips when you're making this decision, because mobile is a really unique way to play those assets together. Defining ROI and ROE. What am I hoping to accomplish with this app? I'm going to use a use case in a few minutes to talk about specifically how that can be used in a very pinpoint manner. what's my return on engagement? How am I going to influence my audience? What can I expect to get back from them? Am I going to give them a lot of information that can be shared via social networking and increase my brand presence with those people's friends who are most likely demographically the same as that person who's downloaded your app? Ideation. This is a tough one because ideas are hard to provide to an external app developer and have them actually deliver on your idea. So many of you have this great idea for an app. It has pictures, it has experience, it has buttons on it. Eventually, you're going to have to pop those little bubbles of ideas and you have to write those down on a sheet of paper and hand that to somebody. And at that moment, your ability to influence the ideation process has really come to an end. Because at some point, 3, 6, 9 months later, you're going to get an app back. The issue there is, have you ever tried to buy a house and tell a developer, I'm going to tell you, speak to you what my dream house is? Blah, 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 blah. Okay, I'll see you in 6 months. And you show up at your house. Is it what you thought it was? Probably not. And so we could talk about that further. Getting internal buy-in is huge. I had this interesting conversation with somebody 2 weeks ago. They had spent $100,000 developing an iPad app for a financial services product. And they made a decision to use Adobe Air. They didn't do native. And they kind of made that decision in a capsule. And they went out, the app got developed, came back from India where they had it developed at. They started using it and all these things like, I really want to be able to do this. I really want to be able to do that. Well, guess what? You can't do it with that particular product. You've made some decisions based on how you built that product. You didn't get internal buy-in on those decisions. And I'm sad to say this gentleman, the reason why we were talking was he was sending me his resume because he was looking for a job. This is an example of a targeted app that has a very unique use. The Triangle Startup Weekend is an event down in North Carolina where people that have good ideas can meet with venture capitalists, and those venture capitalists can have an opportunity to vote on these ideas and decide what they're going to invest in. In the past, they were doing a lot of paper. They were using sticky notes on the wall. They were voting on sticky notes, et cetera, and there was actually a pretty arduous process. This is a little shameless self-promotion here. They used our platform. Me and this little button are not getting along at all. Okay. They used the platform to create an app that actually both gave the agenda for the weekend, and it was a dynamic agenda, meaning it changed as time went along, crowdsourced agenda. I really hate that word, but in any event, as the weekend went along, the app itself kept track of everything they were doing. It was able to send them notes of, hey, we've moved this meeting to another place. They were able to place the ideas in there and actually do a poll inside the app so that when the venture capitalists were having to pitch ideas, they went in and voted right there in the app itself. And so everything was done dynamically. Now, this is an idea that is very small but has a very direct use case and had a very effective ROI and ROE, as they were actually able to do everything they needed through one mobile app. Let's skip that. Me and this button. So some facts that you want to think about. 64% of mobile time is spent using apps. And I look around the room, how many people are looking at their phones right now? Information snacking. I don't know if, has anybody ever heard that term before? Information snacking time. And this is something you really have to think about going back to the earlier part of my conversation is, what are people doing during the time where they're information snacking? Because quite frankly, they're doing the same things you're doing. This solo mo thing, social, local, mobile. Next time you go to a kid's basketball game or a football game or a practice, look around. I was at a Pop Warner football game or football practice a year ago, and I looked around and I could see 63 parents. Of the 63 parents I could see, 52 of them were actively using their mobile phone at that moment. So how am I going to get to those people during that time? What are the unique ways, knowing that they're spending 64% of that mobile time in an app, not on a mobile web, right? They spend 10% more time using mobile apps than they spend on the mobile internet. And on average, Americans spend 2.7 hours per day socializing on their mobiles. Actually, I think you put up some more recent data yesterday that number's actually gone up. One of the presentations I saw. It's constantly going up. Come on, my buddy. Another thing you really need to think about, again, to take advantage of what's happening during this information snacking time, how am I getting to consumers, is what we call the inner circle of apps. So each one of you has a number of apps that you are dedicated to. I venture to say Facebook's one of them, any number of other apps. I have several that I'm really dedicated to. That inner circle of apps for me has its own kind of demographic, right? And it has to do with how the app is designed. Do I enjoy using it? Is it easy to get through, and does it make sense? Competition with other apps and other activities. Is there accomplishment there? How many of you have downloaded Bad Piggies? If you haven't, I think it's the #1 app on the App Store right now. It was when I downloaded it. It is the new release from Angry Birds. So they've taken the piggies and they have given you an opportunity to help them. It's pretty hard, actually. I've only gotten to stage 13, so we'll see how it goes. But it's a good issue. The accomplishment, I had stopped feeling accomplishment with Angry Birds. I got Angry Birds Space. I went through it like in a day and a half, sitting on the couch. I get addicted to it for a very short amount of time. But I'm on stage 13. I've had this app for a week. It's really a lot harder. But there is also a balance of it's too hard, I don't want to ever play it again. But in any event, accomplishment, that was, again, I will say that was a great session yesterday, the three different sessions we heard. Content, am I giving people information that they need, that is relevant, that changes over time, that is not static so that the app goes dead after I've read everything that I want to see? And you guys can see that too. I'm going to call him Fred. Fred is really a pain in the behind. So be unique and be engaging. So how many of you go to a barber or hair salon? Everybody, right? If your barber or hair salon had an app where you could schedule your appointment, where you could receive updates when something special is going on, and where you could try on different hairstyles, different colors, would that be interesting to you? Is that something that you would leave on your phone? Now, I know my wife, I had this conversation with her, she said yes. We actually built an app. In our platform, you have the ability to do this virtual experience where you can take a picture of anything and place anything over the top of it. One of our customers has used that in a cancer app for their cancer patients so that they can take pictures of themselves and put wigs over their head to see what that'll look like. And so you really have to figure out this, what we call the mobile hook. One of the things that we're doing with the Southern States is going to be doing is to try and engage their community very tightly. And I mentioned this to her last night. I'm using it. We were talking about this idea is if you're going to buy, how many of you want to have a chicken coop in your yard? Anybody? But you're like concerned. I don't know how my neighbors are going to feel about it. I don't know how it's going to look when I look out the back door. Why don't we give you the ability to take a picture of your backyard, drop the chicken coop of different types in different places so that you could say, okay, look at this. Let me share this on my Facebook. Let me use this picture and send it to my neighborhood association to get approval. I'm going to put this chicken coop right back here. I want you to prove it. That's an engaging way for that farmer, that home farmer, to want to use your app, to share that app with others and expand your brand outside of who he's already influenced by. 7 minutes. All right, so we're going to have to speed up. Mobile app marketing, pre-launch strategy. Many people try and do too much in the beginning, and in many cases it might be better to test the waters a bit. And so you really do need to have planned iterations of the app. You don't want to wait till the end and see everything. If you're working with an outsourced developer, well, it sounded like God there for a minute. If you're working with an outsourced developer, you don't want to wait too long before you see something. Wireframe is one thing. You want to start seeing graphics very quickly. You want to start seeing, okay, send me the first page with the Facebook thing working. If they can do that. Some outsourced developers can't. If you're using a platform vendor like us, it's pretty easy to do that. Start small. Don't be the guy who spends $100,000 on the app and finds out that it's not good. This is not 1996 where you can spend $100,000 and just throw it away and it doesn't matter. Analyze your feedback. One of the things we recommend that you do is place some type of polling inside your app, or at least in the beginning in a pre-release, so that you can get that feedback. We have a customer right now that's in the alarm industry that's at an electronics show with all of his biggest customers. He created an app just for them that would be an experience of a product that he wants to go to market with. He's having them download it. 75 people downloaded it yesterday and have all filled out the Survey Monkey inside of his little test app so that before we go too far, he already has feedback from the customers he's intending to sell it to. and prioritize your roadmap. Understand that the mobile app is going to need to change because the nature of information and the nature of interaction and the nature of device are all going to change very quickly. For those of you who have apps out in the marketplace, you should look at them right now on an iPhone 5, and you're going to see very quickly that your app has probably got a dead space, either top or bottom or both. Brand your app. We really recommend that you spend a good bit of time developing marketing materials around this and utilizing those marketing materials in the various social networking, in your emails, in your newsletters, on the main page of your website. This is an example of a not-for-profit down in North Carolina, Susie's Law. It's a not-for-profit that was started to save animals. I can go into detail about that later, but they have videos on how to use the app that's on their website, QR codes that were distributed, and they mobily optimized their website as well. Another example here is another not-for-profit called I Enhance Lives. It's Bethesda Lutheran. One of the things they did was actually their marketing and creative staff created T-shirts, and the T-shirts for the first 3 weeks said it's coming. And they walked around and they put stickers on water fountains, etc., for about 2 weeks ahead of time. They went into their retail stores. They did the same thing. It's coming, it's coming. And then the date hit, and they put out these little tabs, the QR codes. They took the QR code stickers and they placed them on all the water fountains, on all the drink machines. They put it on the boxes of the materials. It's kind of like Salvation Army where you can go buy things in the store. And they got something like 180 downloads in the first hour of placing that stuff out there with the QR codes, etc. You also need to spend some time thinking about a keyword strategy. I'm sure you guys heard enough about SEO this week to fill up a trash bag or a bucket. So I'm not going to go into that too much, but you do need to have a consistent conversation with your people around your SEO strategy if you're going to use that to drive traffic to your app. Content strategy. If you have bloggers, if you have LinkedIn groups, if you have local or regional organizations that you're part of, if you're going to trade shows, place a QR code on your people's T-shirts. Send information out. Have a webcast. Do all those things, but you have to make sure that everything stays current, and you have to create buzz so that when that app is available. By the way, I think all this is available online after the event. Am I right about that? Anyway. And your launch strategy. We recommend that you do everything during a launch strategy because it's important that you make sure you touch all the potential ways that people can find out about your app. You build up, again, the pre-launch thing. We did something with another not-for-profit on college campuses where we did the same thing. We put signs up all over the campus with volunteers saying, I forget, they didn't say it's coming. They said something else a little cuter. And then they went out and they just put the QR codes up. They didn't put anything else. You didn't know what it was. You just know there was these QR codes everywhere. I think they posted 6,000 QR codes over the campus. They got 2,700 downloads on the first week of that app. Touch your media, do a press release, advertise it. Those of you who don't know it, there's actually companies out there that can help you get downloads. You need to be very careful with them. Some of them are going to be download and dump, and you really don't want that. That doesn't do you any good. It shows a bunch of downloads, but then when people go and look at when you look at your statistics later, you're going to see you have 6,000 downloads and 4,000 of them only had it on there for 30 seconds. Media engagement. If you're bringing something together that's really cute and coy or that has a really good mobile hook, it's that thing in there that's going to make that app stay, the stickiness factor of functionality, the thing that I'm going to love. For me, the Walgreens app stays on my phone because I can do my prescription refills by scanning. That is the mobile hook for me. In fact, it's created brand connection for me with Walgreens. I don't shop anywhere. My non-Walmart shopping store is now Walgreens, right? And it's purely because of that mobile hook. I hate time. Your promotion strategy should include all these things. Incentivize downloads. You should try and place in your app directories that are in your market. You should create a fun and catchy way for people to engage with you. It's moving by itself now, really. Tracking statistics. If you haven't done it yet, you can use Flurry, which is free, or your Google Analytics, etc. They all need to be plugged into your app so that you can see the same feedback in your app that you do on your website. You need to really look at a 3-month time frame and say, okay, what's happened here? What functions do we need to change? If you've used an outsourced developer, you're going to have to pay to get that change. If you've used a platform, you can make that change yourself, and it won't cost you anything more than what you're paying monthly anyway. And then try and optimize it so it can be more effective given your feedback. And then listen to what they have to say. And that's really one of the most important things you can do is if you've got an actively engaged customer base of your app, listen to their feedback and do what they ask. And that's it. My name's Robert Hancock. I'm with Smart Online. We have a booth out there if you'd like to visit with us, and I hope you guys all have a good day.